Do you know who's killed more people than ICE this year? Trans shooters. Do you know the majority of these high school shootings have been transgender people?
I did not know that.
Yeah.
This conversation between Joe Rogan and Steve-O has been going viral over the last couple of days, and I feel like it has been for all the right reasons, which I think we can acknowledge does not happen very often. But I love the conversation that they had. And what I love most about it is that I feel like the conversation around transgenderism is finally shifting. People are not afraid to acknowledge reality anymore. They're not afraid to push back on the idea that we have to affirm everybody, or we're hateful, bigoted, we want these people to not exist, that we wish harm on them in any way. They're finally pushing back on that idea because we know that that's not true. And what's wild to me in these conversations, especially for people that have accepted transgender ideology, it's bonkers to me how little they have thought about the harm that this has caused, how little that they have thought about the other side of it or the problems that it has caused. And you can see Steve-O, his eyes just kind of open a little bit, his mind seems to be open a little bit, and realize what it is that he's supporting when he's just accepts these talking points at face value. So we're going to get into this, but before we get too much further, I'm Outspoken Samantha. I appreciate you being here. Please hit the like button on this video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for doing both of those things. So we're going to get right into this conversation, and I would love to hear what you guys think in the comments below. I just appreciate that this was done respectfully, and I honestly believe that because these conversations have been so censored and because people have been so afraid to speak up, that more damage was caused than was ever necessary. Had we been able to talk about this more openly before, I think we could have saved a lot of kids, a lot of teens, a lot of heartache for people because of the widespread idea that this was ever meant to be normal. But let's get right into this. Here we go.
Talk to this transgender person, like, hey, can I run something by you? And I spoke with them. They described to me a level of oppression that genuinely broke my heart. They said, hey, let me tell you, like, I am not allowed to use the bathroom at my own place of work. We've got like politics.
That's not true. They're just not allowed to use the bathroom. It doesn't align with their biological sex.
Okay.
See how quickly Steve shifted his thinking? It's not that he completely agreed with what Joe was saying, but it's almost like he hadn't thought about the fact that this guy wasn't talking about oppression. He accepted it immediately as oppression, not even just oppression, but a level of oppression that broke his heart. And he didn't even think about the fact that this person was not being denied access to a bathroom. He was not being denied the right to relieve himself when he needed to. There was nobody at his work blocking the doorway and keeping him from being able to do what everybody else does, placing him at a lower rung on the ladder, seeing him as less than everybody else. He just wasn't allowed to use the bathroom of the opposite sex. That was it. And Steve hadn't even thought about that this man wasn't actually describing a loss of rights. He was just describing a boundary that everybody has lived by, but because he's not allowed to do what he wants, he's describing it as oppression. But just because that's his perspective doesn't make it right. And it's interesting that Steve automatically accepted it as that, but just a little bit of pushback, and he's like, oh, yeah.
But you got to realize they're not all, listen, I genuinely think there's people that feel like they are in the wrong biological sex.
Sure.
Right. But there's also people that are perverts, and they have a thing called autogynephilia. And what that is they get a turn on by pretending to be a woman. They get excited by it, and they want to be around women, and they're creeps. And so you give them a fucking Willy Wonka golden ticket to go into the women's locker room and the women's bathroom and stare at women and pretend you're a woman when you're just a crazy man.
Just so we're clear, Joe Rogan isn't saying that that is who Steve-O's friend is, that he's one of these people that's a pervert and has this fetish about looking like a woman. But how do we differentiate? How do we tell who genuinely has a belief that they are the opposite sex versus those who are driven by these ulterior, disgusting motives? And I'm sure Steve hasn't thought about that either, because there is no way to differentiate. We haven't had any boundaries. We've just said, if you believe that you are the opposite sex, that's what you are. So these people that are gross, like what Joe Rogan is describing, know that they can take advantage of it. and there's no way to determine who is who, and that's what's putting people in danger.
Actually into women.
Okay.
That's real too, man.
I don't doubt that that's real, and I know that it's a super complex, nuanced thing. And
but here's what's not complex. What is your chromosomes?
Right.
Okay, this is the same thing for competing. Right. All these mental gymnastics that seemingly intelligent people do to justify biological males competing with females.
Oh, I'm with it. I don't think anybody's
It's the same
thing. Right.
It's the same thing.
Right.
And especially as speaking as a man who has daughters, like there are creeps. And if you give a creep, and I'm not saying all trans people are creeps,
right,
but a lot of these people that are in trouble for going into women's bathrooms dressed as a woman with a fuck beard and a heart on are just that. They're creeps.
Right, okay.
They're crazy men. And these crazy men, their entire life, they would get beaten up for that. And now all of a sudden they have to be accepted. So you've got two things going on at the same time.
For sure.
You've got people with gender dysphoria that genuinely wish they were a woman or genuinely wish they were a man. And by the way, it's men that are the problem. No one gives a
And we also need to understand that if it's a female going into a men's bathroom or locker room, which has been a significantly small percentage of these transgender issues, she's the one that's going to be in danger if there is a danger. Like, she's not going to be a danger to the people that are in the bathroom. Now, I don't support it the other way either. I don't support women going into men's bathrooms. I think that those boundaries are valuable. They are there for a reason. And it's not like the argument that it's to keep sexual predators out of either space is not even the main reason that those laws were put into place in the first place. Title IX was put there to create equality for women. If men had their own sports competing against each other, women needed to have that opportunity as well. And we all knew that women competing against men would not give them those opportunities. They would lose every single time. They would not be able to have their own awards and scholarships and, advancement opportunities and competitive opportunities. They wouldn't have those things. So we created it because it's like, if men were able to have it, then women should have it too.
No one's going to get hurt.
No
one's going to get hurt. This is the problem. When you allow perverts to have this hall pass to go into women's locker rooms and bathrooms.
Yeah.
So you can't say you're not allowed to use the bathroom where you work. That's not true. You're just not allowed to use the women's room where other women are in there because you're not a woman. And I know you wish you were a woman or whatever's going on, but you're not.
You make a very, very good point.
If you're a woman, talk to most women about this. And it's, unless they're insanely captured by this woke ideology where they can't see reality and the fact that perverts are still a real fucking thing.
Yeah.
And this loophole, you've given loopholes. Like, there's men in prison. I think it's like 47 biological males in California are housed in women's prisons. Some of them are sex offenders. Some of them in Canada. There's a guy in Canada that they had to pay for his boob job while he was in jail for being a sex offender, and they put him in a women's prison.
And again, like, this comes back to the argument where people are saying, well, not all trans people are perverts. They're not all disgusting. They're not all, they don't all have that mentality, but they're not even differentiating between the people that are not going to harm women or maybe aren't perverts, even though I think that is a very tiny percentage of the people that have grasped onto this transgender ideology over the last few years. I don't think it has anything to do with gender dysphoria. I think especially a lot of grown adult males, it has a lot to do with being a pervert. But aside from that, they're not even people that are known sex offenders, people that are known on criminal records to be disgusting human beings. They're even allowing that. You can't even make the argument that you're trying to protect the identities and the reputation of trans people by saying that we can't label them all as predators when you don't even care whether or not they are or they aren't.
I'm not arguing with
There's men who have pretended to be women, gone into women's prison, had sex with women and impregnated them. There's men who have sexually assaulted and raped women in prison.
I just thought, man, I heard what they had to say about, politicians trying to put them in internment camps and,
Who's doing that? What politicians are saying they should be put in internment camps?
I think there was some kind of
there might be one kook out there that's saying that to try to get attention. There's no movement to try to put transgender people in internment camps.
Okay, well then I'll land on this.
Do you know who's killed more people than ICE this year? Trans shooters. Do you know the majority of these high school shootings have been transgender people?
I did not know that.
Yeah. Like at the end of the day, we have to understand that, like, what is more important? One person's feelings or the safety of all these women? And
Right.
the safety of all these women is much more important.
Yep.
So you gotta be kind to people, but also you gotta have rules. There's a reason why there's a woman's room and a men's room. It's because some men are creeps. And if you allow those creeps to just put on a dress, well, and again, I'm not saying all trans people are like
Right.
this at all, but you can't have that loophole. You can't. That's like can't have an open border. Doesn't mean that all immigrants are murderers, and you don't think that either, right?
I
But
don't.
some people that sneak across the border, if you don't check, are going to be murderers. It's just a fact.
Yeah.
So you have to have a closed border to check, and you have to have a gender border too.
Yeah. Well, God damn it. And my only takeaway from my experience that I was relating to you is that it made me feel compassionate.
So I wanted to let them kind of finish their conversation before responding to the rest of it. First of all, nobody has ever said, at least nobody with any credibility or any power or any legitimacy, that we want to put these people in internment camps. If you believe that, you believe a lie, because that has never been something that anybody on the right with a soul, with compassion, with an understanding of this issue has ever advocated for. We believe that the solution is to stop pretending that men can be women, stop pretending that women can be men, stop forcing us to affirm delusion, stop forcing us to pretend and to go along with the lie that these people can be something that they're not, because it is causing harm to them mentally. Stop shoehorning it into public education. Stop pretending and teaching kids that they can pick one or the other, that they can pick their gender, that their gender has nothing to do with their biology. Stop pushing all of these lies and trying to pretend that this is normal. Because as you can hear, all of the harm that has come from this, you cannot pretend to be a compassionate person if you're saying, I heard this person's story and it made me care about them, while you hear all of these other situations that people have been put in that have been dangerous and harmful to them, and ignoring their feelings. That's not compassion. That is willful ignorance. That is manipulation. That is bias. It's everything except compassion. You are not a compassionate person. Anyway, that's the conversation I wanted to focus on today. I would love to hear what your guys' thoughts are in the comments below. Please, again, be sure to hit the like button on this video and subscribe to my channel. As you guys know, we always end with Charlie Kirk. So keep it real, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
You had a son or a daughter and they came out to you and they said, Charlie, I'm gay, or Charlie, I'm trans, what would be your course of action in that? Like, would you still support them?
If they came out as trans, I'd say, no, honey, you're a girl, or no, my son, you're a boy. I don't affirm delusions. You do not affirm what is harmful or what is not true. And you must find the underlying issue as to why this is happening. 75% of minors that are trans are girls, largely found because of social contagions of young ladies that are on the autism spectrum that most times are having puberty anxiety and are being bullied or feel self-conscious for changes that are happening to their body. What we are told is that we must stop puberty, that puberty is the problem. In reality, 99% of the time, puberty is the solution to a lot of these trans issues.
Yes.
That you allow puberty to work its course, all of a sudden, the girl becomes a woman and she feels a lot more at home and safe for how she is and comfortable how she is. That's the worst time to have psychological interventions at that time. Young women have always been more prone to social contagions, and transgenderism is a social contagion. A 5,000% increase in transgenderism is not normal. It wasn't like within everybody, is an external force upon our nation's youth.